to you from the Eastern Mediterranean. And welcome, whether you're joining us with us, Brother Jim Ryan joining us from London. So Jim, a warm welcome to you. Can you hear me? There he is. There's Jim. Jim, first would like to welcome you with some wild flowers from the city of Antalya. And there they are. Sister Binur with those flowers.
They smell very nice.
Thank you so much.
Very nice.
Thank you. So for those who don't know Jim, here is a little bit about him. So Jim has a background as a teacher and management trainer. He's a long-time practitioner of meditation and spiritual study. And I think he's coming up to almost 50 years or so with Baba. He's one of the early students in London. His path has been through many ways, exploring the depths of Christian mysticism and spiritual experience, to the practical strategy, worlds of human development in both the educational and corporate worlds. And he's also the author of 6 books. Jim is also known to some as Jim Narayan, and he was indeed even christened Joker Jim, I believe by Bab Dada, a title which has stuck over the decades. So he's very well positioned to speak on our topic tonight, where we explore, is spirituality serious business? When you go from changing from human to angel to deity, is it a grim process where you're not allowed to smile? Or can you laugh your way to paradise? Of course, our work in a way is serious. The world is in a serious situation. But we do need humor at times in our lives, or perhaps in all times. And so where does humor fit in this Brahmin life? So let's hear what Jim has to share in this. So Jim, a big thanks for being with us. And let's hear what you have to say.
Okay, thanks, Yogesh. Can you hear me okay? Right, it's not very nice to be with the spiritual family. And do I unmute myself? Yeah, okay.
We can hear you.
Okay. So it's very nice to be with the spiritual family and to share with Brahmins, and I don't know, can you be more honest or can you be more natural? It's an interesting thing, isn't it? But all I know is that the program tonight is good. This evening, I don't know what time zone we're all in, but it's going to be a great success, because my day started out incredible. Because so unusually, somebody complimented me on my driving. They were so kind, and they left a little note on the windscreen, and it said, "Parking fine." Humor and laughter, that was a joke, by the way, but never mind. Roaring, I could hear the roars of laughter coming there, but humor and laughter is quite interesting, isn't it? It's something I think we all enjoy. And especially with statements like from Woody Allen, the comedian, that says, I'm not afraid of death, but I just don't want to be there when it happens. And I think it helps us to enjoy and to put us into a different space. It helps us to find things much more attractive. And we smile and we feel better, don't we, with humor and laughter. And I believe humor and its co-partner, laughter, because I think they both go together. And I don't think you can kind of divide them up. Is a natural part of our spiritual nature. Plato, actually, I've got to quote Plato, to make this more kind of sort of serious talk, says that Mount Olympus was said to ring with the laughter of the gods. So they must have learned it at some time or other, and obviously at this particular time of the cycle. But as we all know, through time, our spirituality has been overlain and suppressed by false and negative belief systems and attitudes. And probably humor has suffered the most. And it's almost disappeared completely from our radar of as a component of our spiritual identity and nature. At the present time, the aggressive and body-centric authoritarian regimes and all the kind of new cultural ideologies of the last part of the cycle have manipulated and used spiritual qualities to enhance and validate their position. Okay, it's okay to show love and kindness and respect to each other, but most importantly, show it to us and to what we're telling you and about our position in your society. But humor, they couldn't quite control, too quirky and mercurial. Humor and laughter was always seen as something subversive, I think, a behavior that possibly could create doubts and a kind of questioning attitude about what was being introduced or enforced. So humor was never actually encouraged and often frowned upon. But as we know, it's almost impossible to stop and suppress. And it's constantly popping up its head to make funny comments on situations and circumstances, from the very silly, light-hearted situations like the guy that goes to the doctor and he says, Doctor, I think I'm a cat. And the doctor said, how long have you been thinking this? And the man said, ever since I was a kitten. Or a friend of mine.
Apologies, Jim. Just a request from the translators, a little slower, please.
All right. Okay. Right. Okay. Now then, it's okay. So a friend of mine was mentioning somebody he knew. He said that he was addicted to brake fluid, but he wasn't really worried because he said he could stop at any time. Nope. Okay. I've been reading a book recently on anti-gravity. Do you know what? I just couldn't put it down. That, or that we can use humor is often used, isn't it, to comment on hypocrisy and greed. Like in the story, there's a story of 3 holy men, and they were going along together and they found some money. And then they sort of said, oh, this is wonderful. But to show their kind of religiosity and spirituality to each other, they said, well, we better share it out and give a portion of it to God. And one of them said, well, look, I'm going to draw a circle on the ground and I'm going to throw my part of the money into the air, and whatever lands inside the circle, God can keep. And whatever lands outside the circle, I'll keep. Okay. Now, the second religious person said, well, okay, then. I'm going to draw a circle as well. I'm going to throw my portion up in the air, and whatever lands outside the circle, I can give to God. And whatever lands in the circle, I'll keep that. Now, the third holy man said, well, I'm going to draw a circle, and I'm going to throw my money up in the air, and God can take whatever he wants. And if he catches whatever he wants, he can keep. And whatever lands on the ground, I'll keep. You following me? We'll see. We'll see. Well, okay. So going back to a kind of historical kind of connection of humor, and which is quite interesting, isn't it? And as the jolly old cycle spins its course, we experience and are introduced, aren't we, to new beliefs and new philosophies, and often to enhance and embed these new systems. Humor was always seen as very frivolous, and there was a kind of feeling that humor undermined the seriousness of the message. And yeah, that kind of aspect. You're not meant to enjoy yourself. God wouldn't like it. And that was kind of used as a kind of suppressant of humor. And there's a mindset very, very prevalent, isn't it? Right down to the present time, that we find everywhere in organizations, cultures, belief systems, and so on. And would you believe it? In the Brahmakumaris. Wait, please don't report me, says Shanti. But I feel personally there's a lack of kind of direct humor. Yeah, we smile and nod, but humor, I think, is kind of lacking. And I've got an experience of it, really.
Tenho uma experiência disso.
Okay. Was that telling me off?
Estão-me a dizer alguma coisa? Ele está a perguntar.
Looks like there's another language coming through.
All right.
They'll fix it, but please carry on.
All right. Okay. Well, I'd share an experience about humor, and about Bubba's attitude to humor. Like Yogesh was mentioning, that I had a bit of a reputation. I used to go to Madhaban in my early days, and we used to muck around and joke and do lots of kind of funny stuff and all the rest of it. And it was great fun, really. And I thought that this time when I was going to Madhaban, I'm going to be very serious. I'm going to be very pucker. I'm going to be a good student. I'm going to apply myself with the kind of attitude that Brother Yogesh has. I'm going to be like him. I'm going to focus and be a big pucker yogi. I'm going to sit there and study and all the rest of it. And so, and it just happened that there was a group meeting Baba. And there was a few of us, that in those days you could meet Baba in small groups. And then he was going around and he said to me, "What's wrong with your face?" And I went, "What?" He said, "What's wrong with your face?" And he said, "Have a look at it." And that was enough. And he was indicating that I wasn't being myself, that this wasn't me. This wasn't my role. This wasn't, because I was going around very serious. Well, as much as I could be, I think. And then we happened to meet Baba the next time. It was a few days later. And of course, I had kind of learnt my lesson, after being whacked by Baba, a few times like that in the meeting, and feeling very kind of remorseful. And I sat down, and I just sat down, and I changed my, my focus. And he looked at me, and said, "That's better." It was, and so it was a kind of a lesson for me about this. And humor, I think, as with all, is a primal spiritual energy. Humor and laughter, it can't be repressed or blocked for very long, and it will erupt as a much needed emotional and physical release, helping us to be relaxed and natural, and helping us to see things in a different way, see the funny side of things. As for example, on a council meeting, there was a sign. It said, "Low self-esteem group, please use the back door." Or outside the drug rehabilitation center, there was a sign that said, "Keep off the grass." Maybe some of my jokes are more Western, I don't know. But all that, there's a terrible situation. That was a terrible situation that I think was true. There happened to be a funeral, and what was happening was that the coffin was in a large, very old-fashioned kind of car, and it was going
Era
up.
carro muito antigo, assim, uma moda, assim, mas muito antigo, e era o caixão.
I agree with that. I agree, yeah. You probably heard it, you're saying you heard this one before. Right, but I'll carry on anyway. So the car was going up the hill. This big hearse, as we call it, was going up the hill. And as it went up the hill, it just managed to get to the top. But unfortunately, the back door of the hearse that contained the coffin burst open. And the coffin slid down the hill, all the way down, clatter, 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 clatter. As it reached the bottom, it hit the sidewalk and it shot through the air. This is the coffin, right? Shooting through the air. I'm giving you a visual picture here. Horrifying, isn't it? Shocking. And there just happened to be a pharmacy. And the pharmacy door was open and it went right through the pharmacy door and landed on the counter. And as it landed on the counter, the lid of the coffin shot open and upset the body inside the corpse, and it sat up. And there was a shocked assistant there standing behind the counter, and the corpse said, "Can you give me something to stop this coffin?" Okay. You got that one? Humor and laughter, I think. I'm not sure if humor translates. I'm not sure. We'll see anyway. But anyway, humor and laughter, it's enjoyable, isn't it? When we laugh, it's enjoyable. And it creates enjoyable interludes and a welcome break in life's often very serious journey. You know, a journey that can be, for many, demanding, stressful, and unfortunately unrewarding. And humor entertains us. It helps us smile and says, there'll be better days. Things will get better and situations will pass and there'll be new experiences. Don't worry about it. And it's like, it can be humor can be very silly, can be very lighthearted. And it's like the two hats. See, I'm packing this up full of lots of little jokes on this. Right, okay. They're like the two hats that were on the stand. Right, you can imagine these two hats. And they were having a conversation. And one hat said to the other, "You wait there while I go on ahead." Got that one? Or, no, okay. Or the teacher, there was a teacher. This is from my own experience. There was a teacher and he was looking at this little girl's work, and he was looking at the little girl's work saying, "Oh, that's very good. That's a good improvement. Look at that. Okay, this is very good. Only 10 mistakes." "Oh," said the little girl, I'm so happy." And the teacher said, "Okay, now let's go on to the second line." So there aren't many of us who don't enjoy, a good laugh, a joke, a funny witticism. We enjoy them, don't we? We enjoy kind of witticisms. We enjoy puns. We enjoy kind of funny asides, I think in a way, the reason why we like them, they're like old friends, aren't they? And they're like, they're talking jokes or witticisms or funny kind of comments. And they're talking to us kind of directly. They're talking to us like old friends. They're talking to us about an issue in a very offbeat way. and in a non-negative way. And it's kind of it's breaking the patterning of our kind of dialogue or our interaction. And it's so very important for us to kind of have it enshrined, you know, in our kind of interaction. It's like the guy that was he was going to he was a tourist, and he was going to the market, and he was kind of trying to buy something for his family, and he looked and he saw this. Oh, look at that! That's an interesting skull. And the man said, "What's this skull?" He said, it's the skull of Moses." And the guy looked at him and he said, $100. Oh, no, it's too expensive for me. He said, I just much too expensive. And he's about to go. And I said, okay, wait, look, I've got another one here. Look, this is the skull of Moses when he was a boy. Helps us kind of laugh, doesn't it? Helps us kind of see the kind of what life's about, isn't it? You know, and talk about kind of what life's about, and what's very common today, isn't it? Is about our interaction with God, and about how we kind of have a kind of sometimes a very funny attitude, you know. And I'm not talking about Brahmins. Yeah, I'm talking about Brahmins. Brahmins have a weird attitude as well, just as much as the outsiders. And there was this woman, and she was having an operation, and in the operation, she happened to kind of have a near-death experience, you know, like it was kind of, and she found herself in a subtle form in front of who would she be in front of? Maybe Brahma Baba. Okay, for our story anyway, you know, Babdada. And he said, "Oh, let me just look. Who are you?" She said, "Oh," he says, "Oh, no." He said, "It's too early. No. You're not due for another. Let me just see. Let me check my records." That's what they usually do. This is a very deep point that you can remember when you're giving the course, you know, that there is a kind of book that Bapdada uses to tell you when you need to go, when you're going to leave the body and stuff like that. But it's a deep secret, this one. And he said, he looked in it and he said, "Oh, no, you're not due for another 50 years, at least 50 years, I think. And no, sorry, you'll have to go back." So the woman went back, and she recovered from the operation. And she said, "I've got 50 more years. Oh, great. I'm going to really enjoy myself." And she said, "Look," and she went, I'm going to really change my life. So she went to a local kind of cosmetic hospital, and she had a nose job, an ear job, a boob job, an elbow job, hair job. Oh, she just looked like Sister Genty, you know, like she looked so, you know, attractive and, you know, glamorous and everything, you know. And there she was. And she said, "Right." And she walked out the door. And as she went outside the door, she was immediately knocked over and killed by a tractor. And then in a few seconds later, she found herself out of the body, there in front of Bapdada. And Bapdada, she said, "What's going on? You said I had 50 more years to go. And why am I here?" And he said, "Yeah, you shouldn't be. We just didn't recognize you." The danger, isn't it? We have to be real. We have to be truthful. We have to be sincere, isn't it? Story that you could use. So knowledge and awareness, I think, travel best on this river of humorous acceptability. You know, it opens doors, doesn't it? Brings down our defensive walls of skepticism and doubt. And we allow humor in as an acceptable visitor into our subconscious world, which is programmed to block and reject kind of any deviations from the usually processed informations and beliefs that have been imprinted and laid down over a long period of time. So this is why often people find it very difficult to take on board new things, because the subconscious acts as a barrier, thinking that the systems that I'm here to protect are being kind of eroded by this new belief system. But humor is actually plays a very interesting part in kind of allowing new information, new facets of spirituality to enter in. And it's kind of, I think, I was just thinking about this today, actually. I don't think it'd be interesting to kind of get your take on it. Humor is used by our, if you want to kind of use it in general terms, our higher nature or some part of our intuitive self as a type of subversive saboteur, it helps us to undermine the prison of our subconscious old attitudes and natures by creating a connection with our innate creative spiritual consciousness, which is kind of there but suppressed by an overt kind of barrier, which would only recognize a kind of a new process of information based upon kind of certain criteria, and so it blocks these aspects of newness. And so humor is a very interesting part of the process. And I think for me, I'm beginning to realize and see how important it is in the process of acceptability that for us as teachers and as Brahmins ourselves, for us to be more lighter, to maybe more easy in that particular area. And humor also helps us in many cases and areas of, say, of religious and spiritual taboos, as we all know, and spiritual difficulties, which can be approached in a very light-hearted way. Like in the area, say, of God, it's always a tricky one, isn't it? In certain parts of your world, I know in the Eastern world, it's kind of very delicate, isn't it? And very prickly. Many people can find it prickly or an issue that you have to tread lightly. Where in my part of the world, they go, "Who are you talking? Who's that? Who's that? Is he? What group is he in? Or something? It's not an unknown quantity. God means maybe a footballer or something like that, but not a kind of spiritual being. Spirituality is applied to a good football pass or a good movement in a game, but that's as much as we get. And so I think collating and using stories, funny stories, witticisms, really helps to soften and ease us into the kind of area that often people have barriers or have kind of a reticism to kind of open up because it's too painful, or it's a kind of a minefield. Or that even for Brahmins, you feel that you're not qualified to go in there because you might open up and there might be a tsunami waiting to kind of fall on you from the kind of questions or from an emotional reaction that you kind of get. But I think humor and laughter softens this, eases us into it in the sense of like, simple kind of little story, like the two fish in a small bowl, and one says to the other, "Do you believe in God?" And the other fish said, "What a silly question. Who do you think changes the water?" It's simple, but it's kind of like it brings a smile. It brings a little laughter. It opens. It's a door opener in certain circumstances, isn't it? Or the story of the teacher. This is one I like. I like this story. I've used it a lot. I don't use it so much now, but I did use it in the past. I'm not sure it was more like in cultural programs more than spiritual stories. But I used it in a few schools actually. And this teacher.
Just before you go, there's another request to slow down.
Oh, slow down. Sorry. Yeah. Sorry. Okay. Apologies. And the thing was that the teacher was talking to a group of small children, and he says, "Where do you think God lives? Where do you think God lives?" And all the little children were sitting there going, "Oh, oh, oh," thinking, this is what little children do, isn't it? Oh, oh, thinking, oh. And then and they couldn't come up with anything. And one little girl said, put her hand up, and the teacher says, Maria, where does God live? And she says, they speak like this, he lives in the bathroom. Oh, said the teacher, in the bathroom. All right, why do you say he lives in the bathroom? Well, said the little girl, every day my dad goes up the stairs and bangs on the bathroom door and says, "God, are you still in there?" Yeah. More, and maybe an English type joke, maybe. Or there's another interesting one, isn't it? Humour addresses subjects that people find very sometimes difficult or fearful, especially things like death and dying. This is always a tricky area, isn't it, to kind of address. We can be very serious and very profound, but it kind of like it loads up the kind of sorrow, doesn't it? Or the kind of the energy is kind of like heavy, isn't it, when you go to a funeral or something like that? And I think in a way for us is to kind of, through our vibrations, we can bring lightness and we can bring a new kind of energy. But I think also it's through what we say can really break down the kind of psychic barriers that are being created through the kind of fear and the kind of the anxiety and the loss that death or dying can bring. And it's a great story, like it's a kind of funny story, but it's connected with this in a way. It's like there was a tourist. You might have heard this one, but it's like there was a tourist, and he was going to Vienna, and he thought, I must go and see the grave of Beethoven, the great composer. And so he goes there, and he goes to the grave, and he finds the grave, and he notices there's music coming from the grave. He was kind of familiar with a little bit of it. He wasn't a great aficionado or anything, and he noticed the music. Music, but that's Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. I recognize that, and that's really strange, isn't it? And he got his friend who was kind of also they took him. He said, "Look, come quick, listen to this." And his friend noticed, "Look, this is Beethoven's Symphony coming from the grave." And they know, but it's playing backwards. It's playing backwards. It's incredible. This is absolutely amazing. This is like I can't believe this. And so they went into Vienna and they found a kind of a Beethoven specialist, and because there's quite a few of them there, I should imagine. And so he went and they brought the specialist, and he kind of looked and he said, "Oh, this is incredible. This is Beethoven's symphonies coming from his grave." But they're coming backwards. The music is being played backwards, and the symphonies are being played backwards. 5, 7, 9. This is amazing. They were shocked, and they were standing there kind of bewildered by this kind of psychic kind of experience, like it seemed like it. And then the gardener saunters up, and he says, "What's the matter?" He said, don't worry. He's just decomposing. Got that one? I think humour, doesn't it? Humour helps you get a different perspective on things, doesn't it? It kind of, it helps us deal with our hang-ups. This is really important, I think, isn't it? Our hang-ups, our fears. it diffuses, it softens, it takes us into another space, you know, and a space and attitude, making things not so distant and strange, where we can smile and laugh. You know, it's kind of, this is an experience where generally, isn't it, as I mentioned, that it's not a kind of a common phenomena, you know, well, especially, I'm talking from my experience in my part of the world, you know, that people don't laugh too much. Well, they do a few drinks, they do, I think. But generally, it's kind of laughter and humor is such a thing that is not intrinsic part of our interaction, simply because of past programming, where it's been programmed out of us. This is one that like I was saying earlier, this is one I feel, it is a primal energy. It's a primal part of our consciousness, humor. And to see things with that lightness, that easiness, that experience. And I think it really, because it has a major impact. When you think about all our energies, you know, they all have major impacts, but you think one of the most immediate things is humor. Immediate effect on people. Yeah, you can be very peaceful. It takes a bit of time, doesn't it? Sitting there peaceful, and you gradually get peaceful, doesn't it? Or you're loving, yeah, we enjoy it, you know, like it's a slow gradation of being. But humor, well, maybe my jokes are not getting the immediate response, but it's kind of, I think you get the gist of it, like in that particular way, and giving us that different kind of take on it in that way. It's like, there's another. I've got a good. This one you might get. You know, and it's about behavioral psychology. You know, that we often kind of talk about how different delusions, and I think all jokes and all humor, we can fit them into contextual, you know, Brahman programs. You know, either as just a beginner, or I feel you can use it as kind of a backup to something rather. And this particular story, this one is like, it was a psychiatrist's office, right? And there was 2 patients. And the psychiatrist said, "Hi, fine." He said, "Who sent you?" Said to one of the guys, "Who sent you?" He said, "Oh, my doctor sent me." And he said, "Well, what's your name?" He said, "I'm Napoleon." "Oh," he said, the doctor said, "Why do you say you're Napoleon?" And he said, "Well, God told me." And suddenly a voice came from the back of the room where the other patient sat and said, "No, I didn't." You know, as spiritual students, I think, and spiritual teachers, I think in a way, we do need humor. I think is an essential component of our kind of armory, of our capabilities. Humor to laugh, to bring lightness, an essential support in our delivery, an explanation of spiritual knowledge. We must have it, which for many, I think, many souls can find spiritual knowledge very intimidating, and seemingly very severe and very heavy, you know, of course, depending who's delivering it, you know, but, you know, I mean, I've heard some horrific story, you know, where the person sat at the front was going, all that was like this. It was like they were kind of enacting their own teacher. And that's where they got their kind of their methodology from. And because there was no love, there was no lightness, and so for many Brahmins, this has been a kind of way of actually delivering, you know, this kind of profound essential wisdom, and you've got to have it, you've got to learn it, and thinking that this is going to enter into, and they're going to accept it in that way. And it doesn't, you know, it doesn't work. It really doesn't work like that. And many can find it sort of outside their capabilities. They're listening to this stuff, you know, and they can go into a kind of reactive state, you know, feeling they're thinking, oh, this is a bit like school, or I've had a hard day at work, they're thinking, you know, I don't need this. I don't need this kind of stuff, you know, it's not for me, you know, and they kind of, they lose attention. They lose focus, you know, when it's just straightforward. But humor brings back focus. It's quite interesting, isn't it? And, you know, humor allays these kind of fears. It's quite interesting, isn't it? You know, and old memories. It's quite that what people come when they come to us. There is a kind. I think there is a kind of resonance, a resonation of they're coming to a school, a memory, and then for many they've had bad experiences at school, or they have this kind of preconceived outlook of what school is like. Going to sit there, going to listen to this person who's going to tell me and stuff like that, you know, maybe in a very subtle way. And but humor, what it does, it allays these kind of fears. It kind of disperses them. Oh, this is different, you know. Oh, I like this sister, or I like this brother. She's smiling, and there's laughter, and there's lightness, and immediately, as I said earlier, you know, defensive walls drop. You know, the subconscious opens up, and this is really the key to kind of the transference of spiritual knowledge. Is the kind of dropping of the defensive walls of our students, the barriers and blocks that they come and travel with in that particular way, which were enshrined and help as a kind of protection, but now act as a barrier in that way. And when you think about all the past teachers, the great teachers of the past, Buddha, Christ, Rumi, and so on and so forth, and they constantly used, you know, stories, tales, analogies, and I think jokes. I really do think they joked a lot. But I think later writers in all the belief systems probably scripted them out, you know, trying to ensure the message and the messenger was seen as maybe highly spiritual or more or very profound. We don't want to see our teacher full of lines. No, it's going to be very profound. And so you can begin to see, you know, how these things have kind of developed. And it's quite interesting as well, you know, that I think it was Aristotle, you know, you see, I know my quotes here, you know, but Aristotle said that you can't think without a picture. It's quite interesting, isn't it? You can't think without a picture. You need an image. So you don't just have a concept, but you need an image. And humor provides these kind of the symbology, the analogy for the listener. It provides a familiar, something familiar, a background, something they can hold on to, something they can recognize and move into this kind of great theater that we present them with of teaching and learning. I think it's very important in that particular way. For example, I brought with me, if you don't, so I thought I'd read it to you because it's very nice. This is a kind of, I've got it somewhere here, yeah. This is an analogy, it's amusing, but put in a very nice way by the American teacher Ram Dass. And he's talking about recognizing or using trees as an analogy to understand human beings. I think it's very beautiful. It kind of comes under the context of this particular talk, and because it's kind of light and it's easy and it's amusing. It says that, for example, when you go out into the woods and you look at trees, you see all these different trees. And some of them are bent. Some of them are straight. Some of them are evergreens, and some of them are whatever. And you look at the tree and you allow it. You see why it is the way it is. You sort of understand that it didn't get enough light, possibly. So it turned out that way. And you don't get all emotional about it. You just allow it. You appreciate the tree. The minute you get near humans, you lose all of that. And you're constantly saying, you're to this, or I'm to this. That judging mind comes in. So I practice, he says, turning people into trees, which means appreciating them just the way they are. And I thought that was very nice. It's kind of like you smile at it, don't you? And kind of think, oh, that's really nice. A nice way, a light way, a kind of a very beautiful way of actually transformational consciousness, how we can kind of see others in that particular way. So and there's another, there was another story I was going to say. Oh yeah, there's another analogy, and using kind of the imagery of the time and things that we can understand. So helping the kind of student understand. There was a visitor who was going to see a very wise man. This was a kind of spiritual kind of teacher. And he went to the spiritual teacher. He went to his kind of house, and he was shocked because he went into his room, and he saw there was no furniture at all. And he says, "Master, where's all your furniture?" And the master turned around to the visitor and said, "But where's yours?" He said, "Well, I'm just a visitor here." And the master said, "Well, so am I." And that was a beautiful story, kind of using imagery, using analogy, symbology, in a kind of very light way. It brings the message of letting go, and so on. You can use it to endorse, to back up many kind of things. And it's like Baba isn't Baba always reminding us? I was thinking berating, but telling us in a very nice way, to see all and relate to all as detached observers. That, and when we do this, the drama is seen in a much different way. I think we see the drama in a different way. We see from a different perspective. We see with new eyes. With a new attitude. In our innate natural kind of humor then enables us to see things, to see the idiosyncrasies. I hope that's not too difficult word to translate, is it? Idiosyncrasies, or the unusual things about things, the funny side of things. Like it enables, when you step back from kind of negative critical vision, and we begin to see in a kind of humorous way, you begin to see kind of the inflated self can laugh at ourselves. And it's a very powerful way of change. When we begin to see ourselves in that way, we laugh at ourselves. And when we laugh at ourselves, we change. If someone tells us, we don't change. Our ego, our defense mechanisms bring up, and we say, "Oh, they're blah, blah, blah." We don't. We block it in that particular way. And so Humour enables us to kind of see all the ridiculous stances we adopt and get involved in all the different situations. And also it pulls us back, isn't it, from kind of the precipices of irritability. That's another, sorry about this one, didn't mean to translate irritability. I can't spell it, I just about say it, I think. From the edge, isn't it? Humour pulls you back from the edges of kind of serious misjudgment and pomposity, all this kind of how great you are and how wonderful. It's a very great level. It's a mirror. Humor is a mirror, and it enables us to kind of rectify kind of wrong judgment calls of ourselves. And it pulls us back away from turmoil that we may be kind of the gathering storm that we're building up through kind of wrong thinking and accumulated negative kind of bits and pieces that create that kind of stuff. And we just stop, we laugh, and the tension and anxiety and the fears just drop away. They stop in that particular way. It's like, I'm just thinking of there was a guy. This is a very short little story. I don't know what time we got, how I got, but this is there was a guy. He was a very religious person, and he had a heart attack, and the paramedics came, and all this guy was saying was, repeating his mantra, and the paramedics kind of like picked him up. And he was there chanting his mantra and said, okay, look, he kept chanting his mantra. And the paramedics took him home to where he lived. And his wife said, what did you bring him here for? What did you bring him here for? He's lucky to heart attack. You should have brought him to hospital. And the paramedics said, but he kept saying, hurry home, hurry home, hurry home, hurry home. Hurry home. Did you get that one? Hurry home. Hurry home is a mantra. Okay. And he kept, that's more for kind of Hindi audiences, but I thought I'd share it in that particular way, Or there's, what about, I do have a funny little one, a school one that I use, that there was two really naughty boys that were in school, that we can address it. And they were kind of, and the teacher was wagging their finger and screaming at them as they do in schools, like saying, like, where is God? Where is God? And the boy was terrified. The boy was sitting there terrified. He was quite a naughty little boy. These were sort of like bit teenagers, and the teacher's going, where is God? And he's sitting there absolutely terrified. And after the lesson was ended, the little boy ran all the way home, and he sat down there on the bed, panting and out of breath. And his brother came and he said, what's the matter? What's the matter? He said, God's missing, and they think we stole him. A strange joke. So it's quite maybe I'm just finishing off, that one of the benefits, of course, of humor, I think someone was telling me this the other day, there's been a lot of research done on humor, and the research, I think this is a lot of American research, and there's been some Brahmin research on it, that it actually boosts recall, it boosts memory, it boosts retention, which is very important, isn't it? When we're thinking as a teaching body, we're a spiritual university, isn't it? We mustn't forget that, and we should be always looking at how we can enhance our teaching capabilities. And I feel humor is a huge part, should be a huge part of the way we deliver in that way. And humor creates an emotional arousal, doesn't it? You feel good. And it opens up the faculties of focus. It's quite interesting, isn't it? It opens up the faculties of focus, recall, as I said, and retention, because you feel this is something useful, something you're changing your attitude in that particular way. And much of spiritual knowledge and teaching can be difficult, can be obscure, I think, isn't it, for many. But when put in a very light way, an amusing way, an unusual setting, the message can be received with greater impact and greater realization, and effect, especially about I nearly thought there was one. I just want to finish off. I think looking at the time there, there's a very interesting story about this guy goes to a barber's, and the thing about it in the barbers, the classical thing about barbers is that they've got a take on everything. They're kind of experts in all philosophy. And this barber says, I don't personally think there's a God. There can't be any God. And he kind of went on. He said, well, look, if there is a God, how can there be so many poor people out there on the streets? How would God allow this? And this is a kind of not just barbers, but many people, isn't it? Why is there so many sick people? Why is there so many kind of unjust things happening in the world? Why is there so much suffering and pain? Would God allow these things to happen if there was a God? Now the guy sitting in the chair didn't want to say anything because he didn't want an argument. He just wanted to get out and go on and so on. And he just sat there. So after the barber had kind of done his business and stuff and finished his ranting and his kind of philosophical rambling, the customer left the shop. And as the man went outside, he saw a man in the street outside with very long, unkempt, dirty hair, untrimmed beard. He looked very unkempt, very kind of in a bad way. And so immediately the customer turned back and went into the shop. And he said to the barber, do you know what? He said, barbers don't exist. Oh, what do you mean? How can you say that? Said to the surprised barber. I'm here. I'm the barber. I just worked on you. I just cut your hair. No, said the customer. Barbers don't exist. Because if they did, there would be no people with dirty, long, unkept hair, untrimmed beards, just like that man outside the door. But barbers do exist, said the barber. What happens is people don't come to me. They don't come into me. Exactly, said the customer. That's the point. God too does exist. What happens is people don't go to him, don't look for him, don't connect with him. That's why there's so much pain, there's so much suffering in the world. So I thought it was a nice story, in the sense of it helps us to talk about God. It's a kind of a good entree, that stories like that. It's funny, isn't it? I thought it was funny. And but it's funny in an amusing but clever way. And it kind of explains, it positions kind of this aspect that of Baba in the world. It's very hard sometimes to introduce this concept of God, isn't it, to a kind of very non-believing or atheistic or a world that's kind of denying of God because of so much kind of injustice, or so-called injustice, of course, in the world in that particular way. And so I'd probably finish there. Just put the fun before the mental, and then be fine. So I'll finish there. How am I doing for time? Just look at that, perfect timing. Look at that, Yogesh. Perfect timing.
That was very deep, profound, and philosophical, all at the same time. I do like the saying that the closest distance between any two people is when they're laughing together. Two people laughing at the same thing, all of their differences and disagreements melt away at that moment. So to have a whole group of people laughing together at that moment, they've all become one.
Yeah, sounds like a lunatic asylum, doesn't it? Maybe,
Well, I think we are in one.
Yeah, Brahma Kumaris we're all mad, aren't we, really?
Maybe just one little question before we end off. So In those old days of the gold, have humor? Did we need humor? Were there people who did some of us entertain others with humor? So
Sorry, we missed it. We had a blank when you were speaking.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just thinking back to the times of the golden age, which are coming again soon. Did we have humor? And did we need humor? What is golden aged humor? Have you ever thought about that?
No, it's a good question, isn't it? Really, I think I think in a way it's more about the effect that that the golden age is a resonance of this particular time. You know that that in the golden age they're experiencing it's a knock-on effect of this time where you know, and so humor is a kind of comment on things, and it's kind of looking at things in a different way. And I think in the golden age you don't look at things in a different way. You're not looking at different perspectives. But I think there is laughter in the sense of the enjoyment of being with others, the enjoyment of the experience of the joy that other people are experiencing. But I don't know. It's a good question, actually, isn't it? It's a very debatable question. I know. I don't think they don't sit around telling jokes to each other, but I think it's more about just experiencing the joy that each has in that way. Is that a cop-out?
Oh, I do remember Baba saying that, you will entertain each other on stage. So
maybe singing, but singing and dancing, but I don't know about jokes. I don't know. Maybe you might be right. Actually, I don't know. I can't. We'll have to kind of recall that golden age state. I mean, it's no. I do remember that particular thing. We do entertain each other, but possibly you might be right.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks, Jim. That's been very rich, and I know some of the jokes don't translate from English into the other languages, but some of them do. So a big thanks from all of us. And would you like to see the faces of the family?
Oh no! Don't give me any sorrow, please. Oh yeah, okay.
If you'd like to go to gallery view.